Well, on Friday, Ukraine's president will join a meeting of his country's main allies known as the Coalition of the Willing. The summit will take place in London. Volodymyr Zelensky is hoping for a good result after his meeting last week with US President Donald Trump turned hostile. And we are learning from European officials briefed on the matter that Trump once again raised his voice at the wartime leader after Mr. Zelensky pushed back on handing over Ukrainian territory to Russia as part of a peace plan. After his phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday, Trump is now pressuring Ukraine to accept the end of the war along the current battle lines, likely meaning that Russia would keep the Ukrainian territory it currently holds. President Trump says he will meet with Putin in Hungary next month, but it appears plans to make that happen are on hold. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had intended to meet this week to discuss the next steps. But a source tells CNN those talks are not happening. Though it's not clear whether this will impact the anticipated Trump-Putin summit in Budapest. Christian Holmes brings us the latest on the White House's efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
President Trump appearing to do yet another 180 when it comes to the war in Ukraine after last month meeting with Zelensky and then posting that he believed Ukraine could actually come out of this war, regaining the territory that it had lost to Russia. He's trying to clarify, essentially saying that he doesn't know if they would win the war, and he never said they would win the war, but instead that they maybe could win the war. Listen.
Well, they could. They could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it.
Now, this comes on the heels of even more reporting about that meeting between Zelensky and President Trump on Friday. We had reported already that it had been tense, direct, at times, quote unquote, uncomfortable. But now we're learning that it went beyond that. Points, one source saying that voices were raised, that President Trump grew frustrated, particularly because he was trying to encourage Ukrainian President Zelensky that he was going to have to give up land, that Zelensky was kind of pushing back on that notion, and President Trump grew frustrated. Now, we know that this request for land, to have Ukraine give up land, came as part of the conversation that President Trump had the day before with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So all of this to say it's unclear where things stand with the Russia-Ukraine war, where it stands between Putin and Trump. At the same time, you're starting to see senators back away from a sanctions bill, Republican senators, of course. It's the same time you're hearing President Trump really ramping up this rhetoric against Ukraine, or at least that was separate from what we had heard him saying for the last several months. Now, of course, all eyes on that meeting, which we believe to be next month between President Trump and Putin in Hungary. But the question still remains, what exactly is the White House or President Trump hoping to get out of this meeting? Why do they think there'll be different results a second time when we already saw what happened in Alaska? Kristen Holmes, CNN, the White House.
With US Vice President J.D. Vance in Israel, a shaky ceasefire in Gaza and stop-start progress on ending the war in Ukraine, US President Donald Trump's foreign policy agenda is packed. His much-awaited or anticipated meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, though, may be delayed indefinitely. Last week, Mr. Trump touted plans to quickly set up a summit with Putin in Budapest in Hungary. But sources now telling CNN that a preliminary meeting of the two foreign ministers involved, that would be Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov, of course, has been put on hold. President Trump had this to say about his current view on the war.
Just a few weeks ago at UNGA, you said that Ukraine could possibly win the war and
well, they could. They could
it's
still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. If we make a deal, that's great. If we don't make a deal, it'll be a lot of people are going to be paying a big price.
All right. Well, let's bring in Stephen Collinson, who was CNN's senior reporter on politics. He's live in Washington this hour. Look, Donald Trump was looking to use the momentum of his success with the Gaza ceasefire deal, tenuous as that might now be, to make some progress on a Russia-Ukraine deal. What evidence at this stage is there that he's actually made any further progress, or even whether he has a sort of defined or robust position on the terms of any deal, Stephen?
Well, not very much. And reports that have come out of the call between the president and Putin last week and the summit with Zelensky in the Oval Office seem to suggest that we're not really any further along than we were. The Russians still insisting that Ukraine must give over all of Donbass, and the Ukrainians insisting that's an impossible and dangerous position for them to take. And the president apparently seeking a quick deal, whatever's in it. And it doesn't seem like it's very viable. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and it appears that that didn't push things any further. So I think we're seeing almost parallel things right now in Russia, Ukraine, and regarding the Middle East, is that the administration is trying to fill the gap, if you like, with things that look like momentum, but aren't really adding to the process moving forward. You were talking earlier about J.D. Vance in the Middle East. So that is a time-honored tactic of diplomacy, just to try to keep things alive. But it seems that there's no momentum on the Russia front. And if they hope to get momentum from the Middle East front for Russia, that seems to be stalling as well.